We are going to be sharing the entire construction process that we went through to build our pole barn home ourselves from the ground up. Now, this is something that I have had many requests to share, so I am really thrilled to be gathering all of this footage and clips from 4 years of a process of building a home and compile them for you. Now, whether you're just a curious onlooker or you're actually considering building a pole barn home, I really do hope this is interesting and helpful for you to just see the whole process all at once. I'm actually going to pass the mic here to my husband, Kevin, also known as Mr. Tidbits around here, so that he can talk you through all the footage that I collected and actually go over the process, because this was his labor of love. His hands are on every single corner of this home, and he knows a lot more than I do about the process. So I hope you enjoyed listening to him take us through the construction process. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I will also be linking in the description the completed full home tour that I just shared on my blog and YouTube channel. So you may want to see that after you've viewed this construction so that you can see how it all turned out. So I hope you enjoy it, and I hope it is very enlightening.
Okay, first things first. Being an engineer, I was able to make a 3D model of our house. And with that 3D model, I took it to work there and put it on our 3D printer and created a 3D print of our home so that we can kind of see dimensions and scale. And from there, took the drawings to an architect who was able to draw up our drawings. And then we went and had them engineered, since it was a custom home. And then we went to the excavation part of the project, flattening the ground and digging the holes for the posts, and then poured footings for the concrete and put sonotubes for the poles to go into, and then put concrete around that. And that creates the foundation of the home, holds up the entire structure. Then the excavation of the electrical and plumbing lines. We ran all of them in the same hole to try and reduce costs and knowing where it's at. That's the downside of building a pole barn home with a slab, is everything's underneath that concrete slab. So if anything happens underneath there, there's basically no chance to fix it unless you want to excavate in the middle of your house. That is one thing to consider on these. We haven't had any issues, so we don't plan on it. But yeah, we pulled lines across the whole place, right, so we could center the drains and everything that had to come up out of the ground, so it came up into the walls. That was quite the project there, making sure we had everything exactly where it needed to be, and the engineered plans helped out with that. Now you can see us putting the insulation on the ground, where we did a radiant floor heating system, and so to keep that from radiating into the dirt and not coming up into the slab, you have to put insulation, and that draws the heat up instead of down. 2-inch foam, 4x8 sheets there, and then on top of that we added a plastic water barrier. Dude, it can create quite a bit of moisture under that ground when you're heating it up like that. And so we put that kind of to block the moisture from coming up from the ground up into the slab. Here you can see the loops we put in for the radiant floor. You can only go a maximum of 300 feet per line. So I had many different lines all sectioned out into the floor. You need to have those loops as close as you can together, and there's clips you can buy, like big staples that shove into the insulation to hold it in place. And then we get to pour the slab. So that's the floor of our home. You can see all the lines coming up, and luckily they actually came up where they were supposed to be. That concrete slab was 5 inches thick, and that's why it's considered a slab on grade home, because the slab is on the grade of the floor, or dirt around it. It's not lifted up in the air. It's just whatever the dirt is, that's where it's at. You can see some of the boxes in there, especially where the kids are staying. That's for the P-trap that you have to put in a bathtub or shower. So you have to make a box so you have room enough to put that P-trap in later. Everything else just comes straight up out of the concrete. So here you can kind of start to see some of the framing process happen. Those are the doorways. They had to have their own specific posts around each doorway. And then the interior framing begins. It's just 2x4 framing. We did do 12-foot walls, so those 2x4 by 12 feet long. You don't need any bearing walls, and there's no headers above the doors or windows or anything like that, because all of the weight of the roof is all on the posts. Now we are standing up some walls, and it seems to be coming together now. As you can see, this was a family affair. While I was working, I often had a lot of help on the ground. More just entertainment than anything else. But they enjoyed watching the process. We used chalk lines on the floor to mark where the framing had to be. So I essentially had to draw the entire layout of the house onto the concrete and then follow it. We did have the concrete cut. We were thinking about having the floor stained, so we just cut the concrete, and you can see some of the lines in our concrete that was kind of the design we wanted, but we chose to cover it instead. So you can choose whether you want to cut lines in the floor or not. It can help with cracking, but if it's covered, it doesn't really matter. The concrete's going to crack regardless, and rarely where it's supposed to be. So the trusses, you have two choices with the trusses here. You can either put them on top of the posts like we did, or you can run large beams in between the posts and run your trusses every 2 feet like you would in a normal house. We chose to go this path because it is a little bit cheaper. You will have to put 2x6s in between the trusses to support the ceiling. And so it's kind of a trade-off. Do you put big beams or 2x6s? It doesn't really matter which way you go. We did this just for fewer trusses. And it took me about a month and a half to frame the inside, and took my brothers 3 days to build the roof. So they're a lot faster than I am. So after you get the 2x6s running between the trusses, then you put your OSB, which is that plywood, on the roof. And then you can put your eaves on, or they get a 2x6 and or 2x8 depending on the size, to kind of finish the edge. And there it's ready for roofing after you're done with that. The porch was built a little later on after the roof. Essentially the same style. You needed 2x12s and heavy duty. Since there's no trusses, it needed heavy duty boards like 2x12s to come through there and hold it up. And then we wrapped the house with a Tyvek. This part isn't exactly essential. Depends on your area. It does keep some moisture out, but it can also hold moisture in. So it's kind of, on this style of home, it's up to you whether you want to use it or not. But if you don't use it, you do have to do spray foam insulation, because that would be then your vapor barrier. We chose to use it because we did a fiber-based insulation around the walls, and that vapor barrier keeps that insulation from getting wet. The HVAC system went into the ceiling. The furnace and everything is up in the ceiling because we didn't really have room down in the house to have a utility room. It is a pain to have your furnace up in the ceiling because you have to crawl up in there to change your furnace or your filter every 6 months. But it definitely saved on space, and we don't hear it. It's just up there and does its thing. But to replace it's going to be a fun project if we have to do that in the future. You can also see plumbing that came through. That's all the vents. We decided to run most of our vents up into our 2 cupolas, so we didn't have to puncture a hole through the roof. So the cupolas on the roof are for looks and also for any and all venting that needs to be done for your plumbing system. The electrical rough-in was next. We had to put all our boxes where we thought they were going to be and run wires to them. So the cellulose-based insulation we sprayed into the walls. 2x6 walls, we were able to get really good R values. In the roof, or in the ceiling, we did spray foam insulation, and that spray foam was sprayed right up against the roof or the ceiling. And so that basically caps the top of the house, so you don't have to have the blow-in insulation inside your attic. So you can actually see the sheetrock and the 2x6s that are in the ceiling when you go up in the attic, because that is better for your roof, especially if you have an asphalt or shingle roof. It keeps the heat off of those shingles a lot better. So my attic is the same temperature as the rest of my house. It doesn't get hot during the summer or cold in the winter. So the sheetrock process is next to cover up everything and get us ready for paint. It's a major step in the evolution of the house, in my opinion, because then you can see, okay, this is how big it's going to be. This is the size and the final looks. Important to have all your framing as straight as possible, because when you're at this point, there's no changing it. I refused to do sheetrock, so we hired this out, and they were able to come in 2 weeks and have the entire thing done. That includes all the mudding and taping they have to do to seal it off. It took them just 2 or 3 days to do the actual sheetrock. There's a lot of companies out there that do sheetrock, and their prices do vary, so you can discuss and negotiate with them, but they're very, very fast, and it's far cheaper just to pay someone else to do it than do it yourself, in my experience, when it comes to sheetrock, because they're so fast. They can come in and really get it done. This would have taken me weeks to do. So we were at a time when a lot of things weren't available to us, especially the door. We had to wait extra time to get that because it was a custom door, very fancy and very heavy. So we sheetrocked before all of the doors were in, which is not the best way to go because it allows moisture to come in. So framed in the garage door openings gave us the time. Now we could jump right over to the tin. I got some friends of mine to come in and help me, and we were able to put the tin in and also the eave trim around with the soffit, and the garage doors were then installed. The garage doors were about the only cheap thing that my wife chose to go with. We did a flat panel, mostly because we were in a rush and that was all we could get in the time frame we had. We had a job with Home Depot to use a paint color that they were recommending, so we were in a rush to get that done. The roof, we did a type of roof where they hides the screws inside of the ribs, and so it's a really high quality roof that doesn't have any holes that water could leak in. Due to another Home Depot job, we had to finish the laundry room before anything else was finished. So this room was completely finished months before the house was finished. It looked funny. You go in the house and see this room that was completely done. We did a built-in section where you had the dryer on the bottom and the clothes washer on top. Put in custom cabinets that we bought from a company. So we didn't even have electricity in the house when we were at this point. So we had to run a generator with lights, and the flooring was installed. And this flooring was installed again months before the rest of the house got its flooring.
He's been hard at work. Here's our cool lockers. And then the built-in area. He also got the flooring in last night. Can't believe how much he's done in such little time. But I guess once those walls are up, it moves fairly quick.
So we knew we needed a bathroom to live in the house. You have to have at least one toilet, so in order to move in. And so we built the children's bathroom first, and then we had that situation long after we moved in. So after the bathtub was in, we tiled it and put the toilet in, and we were ready to go in that room. So we knew the ceiling in the whole house was going to be the same color, so I sprayed that before anything else was put in, as well as 2 feet down the wall, because we wanted to kind of separate the colors. And each room was going to be a different color, so we didn't bother with painting those until we were ready for the final makeover. So we did the flooring all in one day, just in the kitchen and living room. I got that all ready for the cabinets to go in, and all the kitchen appliances, and we had to have temporary countertops because we knew we weren't going to have the countertops done in time. So I got some plywood or OSB and put it in on the countertops, and then covered it with some contact paper or plastic. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it allowed us to have some countertop space. So the state of the home when we moved in was very few doors were in the closets or in the rooms. The floor wasn't even finished. It was just concrete past the living room and kitchen. We washed the concrete floor so we can keep all that concrete dust and dirt and everything that was on the floor off of our feet, to kind of prepare it for moving in. We knew it'd be a long time before we had flooring done. Cleanup outside took hours and hours of work. Luckily, I had a lot of help. So our county allowed us to move in before we got the final inspection done. Not a lot of municipalities will let you do that, but our county was gracious enough to say he didn't really care when we moved in. We did have to start paying interest on the loan instead of a normal construction loan where you don't do that to the end. But since we're living in it, we had to start paying that. But you can see, but the condition of the home was really as basic as possible. We didn't have any trim work done. The windows still weren't finished. The walls weren't painted. Everything was kind of displaced. We spent Christmas in this condition. We did build around the oven. That was a kind of an afterthought, a later design decision, so that was added in later. But the kitchen was slowly brought together. We had a slow process of making custom doors on my router, CNC router at work, that we were able to paint. And so as you can see, it wasn't luxury, but it was warm and it was a place to live in. And we were grateful to have it. So 4 years later, our home is finally finished and we're ready to move on to the landscaping outside. If you'd like to see more, Cami just released a full home tour on her channel and blog. Well, I hope you enjoyed this peek into our home and the design process and the construction process. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in our comments section below, and I'll try my hardest to get back to you.
Thanks for joining us, my friends. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you want to dive deeper, I have so many blog posts and videos in my archives just full of details about this whole process. So if you want to dive into a room, get resources, it's all there for you as I have documented every step along the way. So definitely spend some more time with me on my channel or my blog, Tidbits and Company. I hope you've enjoyed seeing this whole thing, and I hope it's encouraged you that good things take time and they're worth all the effort. Thanks again for joining me, and I will be back very soon to share more inspiration for the keeper of the home.